Okay, let's start. Number 1. The Sumerians. You're standing in the ruins of the Great Library of Nineveh in 1849. British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard is pulling clay tablets from the rubble of Ashurbanipal's palace. Tablets that have been buried for 2,500 years beneath the dust of what is now northern Iraq. What he uncovers will take translators a century to fully decode. And when they do, the content will not make sense. Not because the language is difficult. Because what the tablets describe shouldn't exist. The Sumerians emerged in southern Mesopotamia around 4000 BCE, appearing in the archaeological record as if someone pressed a fast-forward button on human progress. Within a few centuries, they had invented cuneiform writing, codified law, developed the 60 base number system that still governs every clock and compass on Earth, mastered complex irrigation agriculture, and constructed the first known cities. Civilizations don't do that. Civilizations accumulate knowledge over generations. The Sumerians appeared complete. Here is what makes astronomers uncomfortable. The Enuma Elish and related Sumerian astronomical tablets describe the solar system in accurate detail, including planets modern science didn't confirm until the 18th and 19th centuries. Uranus was discovered in 1781, Neptune in 1846. The Sumerians recorded them around 3000 BCE. The tablets also document the precession of the equinoxes, the 26,000-year wobble of Earth's axis, a cycle that requires centuries of systematic astronomical observation to calculate. Their measurement of the solar year was accurate to within 4 minutes of our modern figure. Tablet 5A2-40-3, recovered from Nineveh and now in the British Museum, shows a central star surrounded by orbiting bodies with accurate relative sizes and spacing. Researcher Zachariah Sitchin and astrophysicist Robert Temple both noted that the arrangement includes the correct number of planetary bodies plus one large object between Mars and Jupiter, which the tablets call Nibiru. Mainstream archaeologists argue this is a religious diagram, not an astronomical chart. Stars were gods. The symbolism is mythological. But the orbital mechanics are correct. Not approximately. Correct. Here's what the tablets actually say. The Atrahasis epic, over 1700 years older than the earliest Greek medical texts, describes beings called the Anunnaki who descended from the sky and ruled on Earth. When the workload became too heavy, they created humans by mixing the blood of one Anunnaki with clay in a sealed chamber, producing a hybrid worker. The vocabulary used in the tablets, specifically the terms for mixing, the chamber, the gestation period described, aligns with language that modern geneticists reading them for the first time consistently describe using the word gene splicing. The Sumerian Diagnostic Handbook categorized diseases and their treatments using a taxonomic system not replicated in European medicine until the Renaissance, roughly the 16th century CEE. The standard explanation is that the Sumerians were simply first, that civilization began with them, and all of this emerged organically from the human mind, given enough time and necessity. Nomadic farming populations eventually produced writing, then law, then astronomy. Progress, not mystery. But no society creates writing, calendar systems, legal codes, astronomical precision, and medical taxonomy simultaneously and within a single cultural moment. These are outcomes of centuries of accumulated refinement. Except in Sumer, they arrived together. And then, critically, the Sumerians themselves didn't claim credit. The tablets state explicitly and repeatedly that the Anunnaki gave them civilization. They called themselves the people who were taught, not the people who invented, who taught them the orbital positions of planets not visible to the naked eye. Why does the Atrahasis epic describe biological procedures using language that reads like a genetics textbook? Why did the most sophisticated civilization of its era give credit for everything it knew to beings from the sky? The tablets are in London. The Anunnaki left no forwarding address. Number 2. The Old Kingdom Egyptians. You're at the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza at sunrise. The original white limestone casing is gone, stripped for medieval Cairo's mosques, but what remains is still the most precisely aligned large structure on Earth. 2.3 million blocks. 5.9 million tons. A base covering 13 acres. Its orientation to true north deviates by 3/60ths of a degree. The Paris Observatory, built in 1667 with the best instruments European science could produce, is less precisely aligned. This structure is 4,500 years older. The mainstream Egyptological timeline places construction at approximately 2560 BCE, under the Fourth Dynasty pharaoh Khufu. Worker villages have been found nearby. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials supports the dating. The explanation is labor and ingenuity. Tens of thousands of workers organized over decades, using copper chisels, wooden sleds, ramps, and human determination. A monument to royal ambition. Here's what makes engineers uncomfortable. Inside the king's chamber, the granite sarcophagus is carved from a single block of Aswan granite, one of the hardest stones found anywhere near Egypt. Mechanical engineer Christopher Dunn documented its interior in 1998 and found tolerances within 0.01 inches, equivalent to modern CNC machining standards. He identified circular saw marks on the stone's interior showing a feed rate of 0.1 inches per revolution. Producing those marks would require a drill bit exerting pressure approximately 500 times greater than modern diamond core drills apply when cutting granite. The workers who made this had copper chisels. Copper sits at 3 on the Mohs hardness scale. Granite sits at 6 to 7. Copper cannot cut granite. It cannot leave marks like these. Robert Bovell, in findings published in 1994, demonstrated that the 3 Giza pyramids mirror Orion's belt, with accuracy not to the belt's position in 2560 BCE, but to its position in 10,500 BCE. The correlation is precise. Geologist Robert Schoch from Boston University documented weathering patterns on the Sphinx consistent with 7,000 to 10,000 years of rainfall erosion. The Sphinx is carved directly into the bedrock. Egypt has not experienced significant rainfall in 4,000 years. The erosion channels are deep and unmistakable. The timeline does not match. Here's the most damning thing in the entire archaeological record of Egypt. After the Fourth Dynasty, pyramid construction quality collapsed instantly and permanently. The 5th and 6th dynasty pharaohs who followed Khufu had the same workforce, the same territory, the same resources, and built pyramids that are piles of rubble today. Not because of political disruption, not because of material shortages, because whoever actually possessed the technical knowledge for cutting granite to 0.01 inch tolerances was gone, and the Egyptians who came after them could neither replicate nor explain what they left behind. The knowledge didn't erode. It vanished between one pharaoh's reign and the next. The pyramid texts, inscribed inside 5th dynasty pyramids around 2400 BCE, describe the dead pharaoh ascending to the stars using a skyboat, navigating the celestial field by specific star positions. They reference circumpolar stars, describe stellar alignments for passage through specific sky regions, and map an eternal realm above the northern horizon with precise cartographic language. If these are religious metaphors, they are metaphors encoding detailed stellar navigation charts. Someone who had been there wrote the instructions, who cut granite to modern machining tolerances with copper tools. Why does the Sphinx bear thousands of years of rainfall erosion in a desert that's been dry for 4 millennia? What happened between Khufu's perfect pyramid and the rubble that followed? And why do the pyramid texts read like a pilot's manual for the night sky rather than a prayer? The pyramid stands in the answer's place, offering nothing. Number 3. The Minoans. You're inside the Palace of Knossos on the island of Crete in 1500 BCE. The corridor is cool despite the Aegean heat outside. Cool because a ventilation system built into the walls circulates air through terracotta pipes running from the lower floors to the roof. Down the hall, a bathroom with a flushing toilet connects to a sewer line draining into a channel beneath the floor. The bath beside it has separate taps for hot and cold water, heated by fire channels running under the tiles. You are 3,500 years before the Roman Empire, which the textbooks will later call the first civilization with indoor plumbing. You are 4,500 years before rural Southeast Asia, which still lacks what you're standing in. British archaeologist Arthur Evans began excavating Knossos in 1900, uncovering a multi-story palace complex covering 6 acres. His findings revealed 4- and 5-story buildings connected by staircases, terracotta pipe networks with flush mechanisms, drainage channels with stone-capped maintenance access, and fresco-covered walls depicting bull leaping and a goddess figure holding serpents in both hands. The Minoans occupied Crete and the surrounding Aegean islands from approximately 3000 to 1100 BCE. Here's what cannot be explained away. The Minoan writing system called Linear A has never been deciphered. Over 1,500 inscribed objects exist in museum collections worldwide. Linguists established that Linear A predates Linear B, a script deciphered in 1952 as early Greek, by roughly 400 years. Linear A appears on administrative records, religious inscriptions, and what some researchers identify as astronomical notations spread across multiple sites. No bilingual key has ever been found. Every decipherment attempt has failed. We do not know a single word the Minoans wrote in their own language. Not one word. The Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a shipwreck off the Greek coast in 1901, is the most sophisticated pre-modern mechanical device ever discovered. Researcher Tony Freeth from University College London spent over 20 years reverse engineering it, publishing major findings in 2021. It is a geared analog computer calculating astronomical positions, eclipse cycles, and the 4-year Olympic cycle. Its core innovation, the differential gear mechanism, was believed lost to history until it reappeared in European clockmaking in the 17th century CEE. The ship carrying it used cargo typical of Cretan trade routes. What else traveled those routes that didn't survive? Around 1620 BCE, the Thera volcano on Santorini erupted with the force of several hundred nuclear weapons. Within decades, the Minoan palace network across Crete began showing abandonment. By 1100 BCE, Linear A had stopped appearing entirely. The knowledge of flush toilets, underfloor heating, and whatever Minoan astronomical science produced did not survive the collapse. It was not reinvented in Europe for another 2,600 years. Plato, writing in 66 BCE, described Atlantis as a circular island civilization with hot and cold running water, advanced naval power, and elaborate palace architecture before it was swallowed by the sea in a single day. The timeline aligns with Thera. The geography fits the eastern Mediterranean. Whether myth or memory, the description fits the Minoans better than anything else in the ancient record. What does Linear A actually say? What was in the Antikythera mechanism's missing sections? Was Plato describing memory? And why did Europe spend 2,600 years reinventing what this island already had? The tablets wait in museums, silent. From Crete, we move to Mexico, where a different kind of impossible knowledge was carved into basalt faces no one can explain. Number 4. The Olmecs. You're in the Mexican jungle of Veracruz in 1000 BCE. In a clearing that took hundreds of people months to prepare, a stone head the size of a small car is being lowered into position by methods that will remain completely unexplained for 3,000 years. The block weighs 40 tons. The nearest basalt quarry is 60 miles away across swamps, rivers, and dense tropical rainforest. The face on the stone is not generic. It belongs to a specific person with flat-bridged nose, full lips, and a particular type of close-fitting helmet. And this is only one of 17 discovered so far. Several of those faces have anatomical features that no Mesoamerican population is supposed to have had. Not in 1000 BCE. Not by any route the history books describe. American archaeologist Matthew Stirling began systematic excavations of Olmec sites in 1938. What he established over the following decades placed the Olmecs as the mother culture of Mesoamerica. Every major civilization that followed, the Maya, the Aztec, the Zapotec, the Toltec, built on Olmec foundations, borrowed the Olmec calendar system, inherited the Olmec cosmological framework. The Olmecs were first, and no one taught them. Here is what they accomplished that we still can't fully explain. The Olmecs independently developed rubber vulcanization, the process of treating natural latex with heat and sulfur to produce durable, elastic rubber. Inventor Charles Goodyear patented the same process in the United States in 1844 after years of accidental discovery and systematic refinement. The Olmecs were doing it 2,800 years before him. A 1999 study published in Ancient Mesoamerica by anthropologists Michael Tarkanian and Mary Pohl confirmed chemical analysis of Olmec rubber artifacts showing sulfur content consistent with vulcanization, not simple latex extraction. Vulcanization is a two-step chemical process requiring specific temperature ranges and precise sulfur ratios. It is not discovered by accident. It requires understanding the chemistry of polymers. The long count calendar attributed to the Olmecs and later adopted by the Maya tracks astronomical cycles extending 1.5 million years into the past. Its Venus cycle calculations are accurate to within 14 seconds per year compared to modern astronomical measurements. Its framework incorporates the precession of the equinoxes, the 26,000-year wobble of Earth's axis. Archaeologist John Carlson, publishing in Science in 1975, documented an Olmec magnetic compass made from iron ore that predates documented Chinese compass use by over 1,000 years. Now look at the heads. 17 colossal basalt heads, weighing between 6 and 40 tons, have been found across 4 Olmec sites. Each is a portrait, not a symbol. Each face is individual. Researchers including historian Ivan van Sertima and anthropologist Patrick Chouinard noted that multiple heads display anatomical features, the nose structure, the lip morphology, the orbital ridge, inconsistent with known pre-Columbian Mesoamerican populations, but consistent with West African populations. Ancient DNA from Olmec skeletal remains has been nearly impossible to recover due to tropical soil conditions. The mainstream explanation is that rounded features appear in many populations, and the resemblance is coincidental. No transoceanic contact occurred. But rubber vulcanization requires specific chemical knowledge. The long count requires multi-generational astronomical observation. A magnetic compass requires understanding polarity, not just noticing that one rock attracts another. These are technical systems, not observations. They are precise in ways that coincidence doesn't produce. Around 400 BCE, the Olmec heartland at La Venta was abandoned. The colossal heads were deliberately buried, and in several cases, mutilated. Monuments were smashed. The sites were covered. Whether by the Olmecs themselves or by successors erasing a rival history, the evidence of this civilization was intentionally removed from the surface of the earth. How did the Olmecs develop rubber vulcanization 2,800 years before Goodyear? Where did the long count calendar's planetary precision come from? Why do multiple stone portraits show faces that don't match the local population? And why was all of it deliberately buried? 60 miles of jungle and 3,000 years of intentional silence. Number 5. The Tiwanaku. You're standing at 12,500 feet on the Bolivian Altiplano, gasping in air that's 40% thinner than at sea level. Around you, massive stone blocks weighing up to 130 tons are scattered like a giant's discarded construction materials, thrown apart as if by some immense, violent force. But look at the ones still in their original positions. The surfaces are machined flat to within 0.02 inches. The drill holes are perfectly circular, uniform in diameter, to within fractions of a millimeter. The H-shaped interlocking blocks slot together in 3 dimensions like precision-engineered components designed on a computer. You are at Pumapunku, and you are looking at what a civilization supposedly built using only bronze chisels, no wheels, and no writing system. The Tiwanaku culture dominated the Lake Titicaca Basin from approximately 300 to 1000 CE, according to mainstream archaeology. Bolivian-German excavations led by Oswald Rivera in the 1960s established the basic cultural timeline. The Tiwanaku built Pumapunku, a raised ceremonial platform complex that represents some of the most precisely worked stone found anywhere on Earth, at any period, in any culture. Here's what the stones tell you if you study them closely. In 1986, engineer Christopher Dunn from UC Berkeley documented the Pumapunku blocks and found drill holes with circular symmetry accurate to fractions of a millimeter. Surfaces measured with a laser level showing tolerances within 0.02 inches, and 3-dimensional interlocking cuts requiring either computer-aided manufacturing or a brachia level of manual precision engineering beyond anything documented in Bronze Age archaeology. Andesite ranks 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. Bronze ranks 3 to 4. Bronze does not cut andesite. It cannot leave the marks found on these stones. There are no tool marks at all. Under microscopic analysis, the surfaces are clean. The nearest andesite quarry is 55 miles away. The largest block at the site weighs 130 tons. There is no known method by which the Tiwanaku transported these blocks across the Altiplano without wheels or large draft animals. Lake Titicaca sits between the quarry and the site. There is no geological evidence of a waterway capable of carrying stone barges at the required scale. The math on manual transport, even with thousands of workers, does not produce these tolerances at this altitude on this terrain. The Gate of the Sun, carved from a single block of andesite measuring 9.8 feet tall, stands at the site's western end. Its central relief depicts a deity figure identified across multiple Andean cultures as Viracocha, flanked by 48 winged beings. Archaeoastronomer Arthur Pisnansky spent decades analyzing the calendar encoded in those figures, publishing findings in the 1940s suggesting the stellar positions depicted correspond to the sky of 15,000 BCE, not 500 CE. If the calendar is accurate, the foundation layer of Puma Punku predates its supposed builders by 14,000 years. Ancient Andean oral traditions, recorded by Spanish chroniclers in the 16th century, consistently describe Viracocha as a white-bearded stranger who arrived from across the sea carrying knowledge, taught the people stonework, agriculture, and astronomy, then departed, promising to return. The site shows evidence of catastrophic, violent destruction. Massive blocks weighing tens of tons have been displaced laterally with a force inconsistent with earthquakes or erosion. Something ended this with extraordinary violence. Who is Viracocha, and why do Andean traditions describe him in terms that echo the Sumerian Anunnaki descriptions point for point? How were andesite blocks drilled to millimeter precision without metal harder than the stone itself? What force scattered 130-ton blocks across the Altiplano? And was Puma Punku built by the Tiwanaku? Or did the Tiwanaku build their city around ruins they found and couldn't explain? The blocks answer nothing. They just sit there, impossibly precise, impossibly shattered. Number 6. The Vinca. You're in the Danube River valley of what is now Serbia in 5000 BCE. The official timeline says you shouldn't be here like this. Writing won't be invented for another 2,000 years. Metallurgy won't begin for another 700. And yet, in this settlement called Vincabello Brdo, which archaeologist Milo J. Vasic will excavate beginning in 1908, people are inscribing consistent, repeating symbols onto ceramic objects with geometric precision. They are smelting copper, building 2-story houses with specialized rooms, using standardized weights for trade, and they have been doing all of this for 700 years already. The Vinca culture occupied a region across modern Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary from approximately 5,700 to 4,500 BCE. Over 150 sites have been excavated. Europe's first complex civilization, earlier than Greece, earlier than Rome, earlier than everything the Western world considers its inheritance. Here's what makes linguists and archaeologists deeply uncomfortable. The Vinca symbols, inscribed on over 1,000 ceramic objects across those 150 sites, form a consistent notation system with more than 200 distinct signs. Archaeologist Harold Harmon from the Institute for Advanced Studies in Austria published findings in 1996, arguing these constitute the world's earliest proto-writing, predating Sumerian cuneiform by 2,000 years. Then researcher Shan Win, in a 1981 comparative analysis, identified 23 Vinca symbols with direct visual counterparts in early Sumerian cuneiform. The same symbols, separated by 2,000 miles, separated by 2,000 years. The mainstream explanation is convergent evolution. Human minds arrive at similar shapes when representing similar concepts. 23 identical symbols. Independent invention. The Vinca were also smelting copper with controlled annealing, a deliberate heating and slow cooling process that improves metal ductility, dated to 5,200 BCE, the earliest known metallurgy in Europe, a technique that requires understanding how metal crystalline structure responds to temperature. This is not an accident. It is procedural chemistry. Then around 4,500 BCE, the Vinca culture ended. Not by conquest. No invasion evidence. No epidemic in the skeletal record. The settlements were abandoned and burned. Physical evidence at dozens of sites shows fires set from the inside, with objects deliberately smashed before the people left. The population dispersed, and the specific symbols, metallurgical knowledge, and architectural traditions ceased simultaneously. As if by collective decision, the most technically advanced culture in Neolithic Europe destroyed every trace of its own existence and walked away. Someone knew something that required erasing. This is not the first time in this video we've seen a civilization destroy its own record. Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. The Olmec heads were deliberately mutilated. And now Europe's first civilization, burning its own cities from the inside. The pattern is not coincidence. Civilizations don't collectively choose to erase themselves without a reason. Something was being hidden, or something was coming, and they didn't want what they knew to fall into other hands. Were the Vinca symbols the world's first writing? How do 23 specific signs appear identically in both Vinca pottery and Sumerian cuneiform across 2,000 miles and 2,000 years? Why did the most advanced culture in Neolithic Europe deliberately burn everything and vanish? What did they know that someone or something couldn't be allowed to inherit? The burned pottery holds the symbols. No one has read them. From the Danube, we travel to Ethiopia, where a civilization moved stones that 21st century aircraft couldn't carry in one piece. Number 7. The Aksumites. You're in Rome in 1937. The fascist Italian government has just removed a 1700-year-old obelisk from the city of Aksum in northern Ethiopia and shipped it to Rome as a trophy of conquest. The obelisk stands 78 feet tall. It is one solid piece of carved granite, intricately decorated with false windows and door panels on all four sides. Moving it from Ethiopia required Italy's most advanced military engineering equipment. Returning it to Ethiopia in 2005 required the largest air cargo aircraft in operational use at the time, a Russian Antonov An-1-2-4, which could only transport it in 3 pieces because no aircraft existed capable of carrying the full monolith. The people who built this monument and erected it 1,700 years ago had neither the aircraft nor the cranes. They did it in one piece. And the obelisk Italy moved wasn't even the largest one the Aksumites built. The Aksumite Empire dominated northeastern Africa and the Arabian Peninsula from roughly 100 to 940 CE, with cultural roots extending to 400 BCE. The civilization constructed a series of towering stone stelae, carved granite monoliths, above their capital city in what is now northern Ethiopia. Ethiopian and Italian archaeological surveys from the 1970s and 1980s documented the surviving structures and the scattered remains of those that didn't survive erection. Here is the scale of what they attempted. The stele of Aksum stands 78 feet tall and weighs 160 tons. It has stood upright without external support since the 4th century CE. The Great Stele, the largest monolith ever attempted in human history, measured 108 feet in length and weighed an estimated 500 tons. It fell, presumably during the erection process, and lies broken in multiple pieces near the quarry, roughly 1 mile from the city center. The quarry shows extraction marks consistent with a civilization that regularly handled objects in the 100 to 200 ton range as standard engineering practice. No ramps have been found. No evidence of dragging systems. No log rollways, no counterweight infrastructure, no written description of the process from any Aksumite source. Here's what the Aksumite texts do describe. The Khmer Empire, the Book of the Glory of Kings, details the history of the Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia. It was brought from Jerusalem by Menelik I, son of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. The Khmer Empire then describes the Ark as a device of extraordinary power. It levitated the wagons transporting it several feet off the ground during the journey. It struck dead those who touched it without authority. On the battlefield, it obliterated enemy formations with concentrated beams of fire. Survivors of those battles, described in experienced modern readers, find familiar. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church maintains to this day that the original Ark is kept in a small chapel in Aksum, protected by a single guardian monk whose sole duty is to never leave the building and never allow the Ark to be examined. No archaeologist, no journalist, no visiting dignitary has ever been permitted inside. British journalist Graham Hancock spent years investigating the Aksum connection, publishing findings in 1992 in The Sign and the Seal. He proposed that the Aksumites' ability to raise 160-ton obelisks was connected to the Ark's described electromagnetic or acoustic properties, that the device provided a form of mechanical advantage for lifting that has no equivalent in known engineering. This proposal has not been demonstrated, but neither has any conventional method for erecting a 160-ton solid granite column in the 4th century CE without modern lifting equipment. The knowledge of how the standing stelae were erected died with the Aksumite Empire. When the empire fell in 940 CE, the answer went with it. How did the Aksumites regularly erect 100 to 160-ton single granite columns? Why does the Khmer Empire describe levitation as routine Aksumite practice? What is inside the Aksum chapel? And why has no independent researcher ever been allowed to look? A monk guards a closed door. That is all anyone outside Ethiopia knows for certain. Number 8. The Indus Valley Civilization. You're in Mohenjo-Daro in 2000 BCE. Every street in this city of 40,000 people runs on a perfect grid aligned to the cardinal directions. Every house has its own clay brick drain connected to an underground sewer running beneath each block, sealed with fitted stone covers for maintenance access. Public wells at regular intervals. Garbage chutes in houses feeding street-level collection bins. And the bricks, every brick in every building across every city in the entire Indus Valley, from what is now Pakistan to coastal Gujarat, cut to the identical ratio of 1 to 2 to 4. Someone set a standard and enforced it across 500,000 square miles, an area larger than Western Europe, without horses, without iron, without wheels. British colonial archaeologist John Marshall began systematic excavations at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro in the 1920s, uncovering the largest civilization of the ancient world by geographic area, larger than Mesopotamia, larger than Egypt, active from 3300 to 3000 to 3000 BCE, almost entirely unknown to most people today. Here's the scale. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro dates to 2500 BCE. 39 feet long, 23 feet wide, watertight bricks, sealed with natural tar, dedicated changing rooms, drainage with filtration. The Lothal Dockyard, documented by Indian archaeologist S.R. Rao in 1955, measures 720 feet and uses tidal-lock engineering, interlocking gated chambers that maintain water levels during tidal cycles to allow ships to enter regardless of tide stage. Dutch engineers independently developed tidal-lock technology in the 13th century CEA. 3,500 years later, Haida script was used across all of this. Over 4,000 inscribed artifacts, between 400 and 600 distinct signs, trade networks spanning 500,000 square miles, and not one sentence has ever been deciphered. Not one word. No bilingual key exists. After 3300 BCE, the script stopped appearing along with everything else. Here's what the textbooks don't lead with. Excavations at the upper levels of multiple Indus Valley sites, documented by British archaeologist Ernest Mackay in the 1920s and later analyzed by D.P. Agrawal of the Physical Research Laboratory in Ahmedabad in 1980, found layers of vitrified stone, rock fused at sustained temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature of natural fire is roughly 2,000 degrees. Nothing in the Bronze Age toolkit generates 3,000 degree sustained heat across city districts. Nothing. The Mahabharata, the ancient Sanskrit epic written in this exact region, describes a weapon called the Brahmastra, a single column of smoke and fire brighter than 10,000 suns. Animals and humans in range die immediately. Survivors in the following weeks experience hair falling out, nails separating, unquenchable thirst, bleeding from the mouth. That is not religious poetry. That is a clinical description of acute radiation syndrome following a nuclear detonation. Vitrified stone at temperatures no Bronze Age tool can produce. An unread script spread across half a continent. A civilization that had tidal-lock engineering 3,500 years before Europe. And the oldest literature from this region describing nuclear-scale weapons with symptoms matching modern radiation poisoning manuals. Why did the largest ancient civilization by area leave no readable record? What produced vitrification temperatures across city districts that no known ancient technology generates? Why do Sanskrit epics from this exact region describe nuclear weapons with clinical specificity? And what ended this civilization so completely that we can't even read their name? The grid streets remain. Every answer is sealed inside bricks no one has opened. From the subcontinent, we cross the ocean to Southeast Asia, where a city of 1 million people was abandoned overnight, and the jungle took it back in a generation. Number 9. The Khmer. You're an anchor in 1150 CE. A city of over 1 million people surrounds you, the largest pre-industrial urban center on Earth. The hydraulic system beneath the streets moves water across 1,000 square miles of rice paddies through an engineered network of channels, reservoirs, dikes, and sluice gates managed by a dedicated engineering bureaucracy. The temple rising at the city's center covers 400 acres, its 5 towers aligned to the western horizon with a precision that marks the exact moment of the spring equinox sunrise. You are living in the most sophisticated pre-industrial city ever built. Within 300 years, it will be completely abandoned. Within 400 years, even the descendants of its kings won't know where it stood. The Khmer Empire dominated mainland Southeast Asia from 802 to 1431 CE. French explorer Henry Mauhat encountered Angkor Wat in 1860, finding it half consumed by jungle. Systematic surveys followed over the next century. In 2007, archaeologist Damien Evans led a LiDAR aerial survey that revealed Greater Angkor as a connected urban complex covering 385 square miles, the largest pre-industrial settlement complex ever discovered on Earth. Here's the engineering. Angkor's hydraulic system, analyzed through the Greater Angkor Project between 2000 and 2016, includes 74 major temple complexes, enormous rectangular reservoirs called beres, and an interlocking canal network controlling seasonal flooding, storing monsoon water for the dry season, and distributing it across agricultural zones with precise graduated flow rates. The West Beret alone held 53 million cubic yards of water. Topographic analysis published by Evans and Fletcher in 2015 showed the system's hydraulic gradient modeling is consistent with engineering principles not formally codified in Western hydraulics until the 18th century CE. The Khmer had them 600 years earlier. Here's what no guidebook mentions. Angkor Wat's 5 central towers, mapped against the night sky, mirror the Pleiades cluster as it appeared on the spring equinox horizon in 10,500 BCE. Not 1150 CE, not the sky above their heads. The sky from 9,700 years before they built the temple. Graham Hancock and astrophysicist Robert Bovell published this alignment analysis in 1995. The mainstream explanation is Hindu cosmological symbolism, but the specific stellar configuration encoded is not associated with any documented Hindu deity. The sky of 10,500 BCE is simply there, in stone, in the jungle, 9,700 years after those stars held that position. Someone remembered that sky. Someone built it into a structure meant to last forever. The ancient Khmer foundation inscriptions describe the first builders of Angkor not as kings or human architects, but as the Nagas, serpent beings who lived in the water. The texts describe the Nagas as multi-headed, with human speech, royal authority, and the specific ability to teach water management and celestial navigation. In one foundational myth, a Khmer king marries a Naga princess and inherits the knowledge that allows Angkor to be built. Beings from water, serpentine in form, who appeared and taught a civilization engineering and astronomy before departing. The Sumerians called the same beings the Anunnaki, described them as coming from the sea, and attributed civilization to them. Across 4,000 years and 5,000 miles, the description is the same. Angkor was abandoned in 1431 CE. The hydraulic system silted up within decades. The jungle consumed a million-person city in less than a generation. A century later, traders sailing the Mekong had no record it had ever existed. Who designed the hydraulic system that was 600 years ahead of European engineering? Why does Angkor Wat map the sky of 10,500 BCE? Who were the Nagas? And why do water-dwelling beings who teach civilization appear independently in Sumerian, Khmer, and at least half a dozen other ancient traditions across 4 separate continents? The jungle grew back. The question didn't close. From Cambodia, we make our last journey to the Peruvian coast, where the most biologically impossible humans ever found were buried in the desert. Number 10. The Paracas and Nazca. You're in a small museum on the Peruvian coastal desert. On the shelves, wrapped in fragments of extraordinary cloth, are skulls. Not normal human skulls. These are elongated, stretched backward from the crown, some measuring nearly twice the cranial volume of a modern human. Found in 1928, when Peruvian archaeologist Julio Tello opened burial caves on the Paracas Peninsula and discovered over 400 mummified individuals with the same morphology. The official explanation is head binding. Wrapping an infant's skull with boards during early childhood gradually reshapes growing bone. Head binding is real. It is documented in dozens of cultures. But head binding only reshapes existing bone. It does not generate new bone mass. It does not create a second parietal plate where the human skull normally has one. It does not add 25% to total cranial volume. These skulls are not reshaped. They are different. In 2014, researcher Brian Forrester submitted samples from 18 Paracas skulls to 3 independent genetic laboratories for mitochondrial DNA analysis. The haplogroups identified did not match any known Native American population, did not match Asian populations, did not match European populations. One of the 3 labs reported DNA sequences that did not correspond to any known human genetic lineage in any database then in existence. Multiple researchers have since requested institutional follow-up. No major university, no government archaeological body, no international organization has funded the study. The results sit in a 2014 report, and nothing has moved. Nothing. Go 100 miles south across the coastal desert. The Nazca lines cover roughly 175 square miles of flat desert surface, carved by removing iron oxide-coated pebbles to reveal lighter ground beneath. Over 300 geometric figures and 70 animal glyphs. The straight lines run perfectly, without deviation, for up to 30 miles, crossing hills, valleys, and drainage channels without breaking. The hummingbird spans 300 feet. The condor stretches 440 feet. Every animal figure was designed to be perceived as a coherent image from altitude. From the ground, standing next to any of them, you see only shallow lines in the dirt. They were made for eyes looking down from above. German mathematician Maria Reich documented the Nazca lines across 40 years of fieldwork beginning in 1946. Many geometric lines track solstice and equinox sunrise and sunset directions with measurable precision. The astronomical encoding is real. What she could not explain was why a ground-level culture created art requiring aerial perspective to perceive. Mainstream archaeology answers that the Nazca used planning models scaled up from the ground, which is mechanically possible. But you do not create 440-foot condors visible only from the sky if your intended audience is standing next to you. The Paracas textiles found in the same burial caves carry over 200 distinct colors from dye sources still partially unidentified by modern chemists. Thread counts reach 398 threads per inch, finer than any pre-industrial European textile. Colors have remained stable across 2,000 years of desert burial. The specific dyeing process has not been fully replicated. Both cultures ended. The Paracas around 100 CE, the Nazca around 500 CE. The elongated skull morphology does not end with them. It appears in pre-dynastic Egypt, in Malta, in Mesoamerica, across cultures with no documented contact, separated by oceans and centuries. These 10 civilizations were not isolated mysteries. They were peaks. The Sumerians knew the planets before telescopes existed. The Old Kingdom Egyptians cut granite to tolerances we match only with CNC machines. The Olmecs vulcanized rubber 2,800 years before Goodyear. The Indus Valley people built tidal-lock docks 3,500 years ahead of Europe, then left a script no one can read. The Khmer encoded a sky from 10,500 BCE in stone and called their teachers serpent beings from the water. And the Paracas left DNA that fits no human lineage on record. This is not coincidence. This is not convergent evolution. This is inheritance. And inheritance implies a source that we have not been told about and may not be ready to name. If you followed this far, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Like if you think the official timeline has more holes than any textbook admits. And drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from.